This video will show you how to replace the driver's side transmission mount on a Ford Edge. This will be located along the driver's side of your engine compartment. Let's get into it. To remove the upper air filter housing, we're making our way to the mass airflow sensor. If you were looking underneath this area, you're going to find a small red locking tab. That red locking tab needs to be carefully pried rearward or outward. Once you have it dislodged, we can squeeze in on the secondary locking tab and pull this out of place. To do this, I'm just using a small flat blade screwdriver. You can use a small pick if necessary. I'm just going underneath the tab, pulling it away. With that pulled away, I'm squeezing on the secondary tab, and I'll just show you what all that looks like. There's our red tab. The next tab that I squeezed on is right here. A quick inspection for corrosion. Let's follow this wiring harness down to its mounting point. So down in the corner here, we're going to dislodge the wiring harness from our air filter housing. I'm using a small trim tool as a prying device. As you can tell, the plastic tab broke. That's common. If yours happens to break, we're just going to remove that, and you can use a wire tie for the installation. Now that I have that disconnected, I'm making my way towards where my two locking tabs are. This is holding the upper housing to the lower housing. We'll just carefully dislodge those. At this point, we can lift up on the corner of this. We're going to carefully start pulling it towards the engine, pulling it away from the lower housing on the driver's side. Now we're going to continue removing the upper air filter housing from the air inlet tube. There's a clamp right here. We're using an 8mm to loosen this. We're loosening the clamp just enough that we can remove the upper housing from the inlet tube. Let's set this aside. Let's remove the air filter. You want to give this a quick inspection. If it's dirty, replace it. After that, we can start removing the lower housing. As far as the lower housing, as you make your way towards the forward aspect of it, you're going to find a small metal bracket held in place with two 8mm headed bolts. Remove the pair and the bracket. To remove the lower housing, we're going to give it a wiggle. On the bottom of the housing, it has two locating tabs, and those slide into rubber grommets. It may feel as though it's stuck in place. There we go. We can see those two locating tabs, and looking down, you can see the rubber grommets. The next thing we have to do is start removing the battery and the battery tray, making our way down towards our mount. To remove the battery, we're starting at our negative battery terminal. I'm using a 10mm to loosen the mounting nut so I can remove the terminal end from the battery lead. We'll just disconnect that. A quick inspection, we're going to set it aside so it's making no contact. Let's make our way to the positive terminal next. As far as the positive terminal, typically you're going to find that you have some sort of protector on the top. If you do, just go ahead and dislodge that. Up along the top of this terminal end, you know exactly what to do. We're using a 10mm. Let's loosen this up enough that we can get the terminal end off of here. Now your battery should have a battery hold down. The hold down is going to be bolted down to the tray. On our particular application, the battery hold down's missing. Remove the hardware and the hold down. After that, we'll carefully take hold of the battery and we're lifting it up and out of position. As I start lifting this, you do want to be aware that the battery can be heavy. We'll set that aside. With the battery out of the way, we're focusing on the battery tray itself. Now there is several pieces of hardware, but first, on the inboard rearward side, we have an electrical connector that we have to dislodge. Once again, I'm just using a trim tool. We're lifting that up and out of place just as I did before. A quick inspection. If anything's broken, you can use a wire tie during the installation. Now we can continue on to the hardware, holding the battery hold down in place. You're going to find that you have two mounting bolts, and you'll have one mounting nut. The mounting nut is on the rearward side. Now, as far as my lower hardware, as I mentioned, it's in poor condition. I'm going to have to use a stripped bolt removal socket. Just tap this on in place. Obviously, I'm going to be replacing this, and now I'll repeat the process for the next one. Now at this point, I've removed all my hardware. Holding this in place, I'm going to take hold of it and we'll shift it up and out of place. Just a quick inspection of that and we'll set it aside. That exposes our transmission mount.
Now the next thing we have to do is carefully make our way under the vehicle. I'm using a jack with a small piece of wood and I'm going up against my transmission. I need to apply light pressure before starting to remove the mount.
This is also how we're going to adjust the height of the transmission for the removal process. After applying support, we're back up in the engine compartment. We're looking at the transmission mount. Let's start removing the through bolt that goes through one portion of the mount all the way through to the other side. We're using an 18mm for this. Once you have it loose enough, you should find that the rearward nut falls out of place. Go ahead and take hold of that. A quick inspection, set it aside. Now here's where you'd want to make the adjustment for your transmission. Either raise it or lower it depending on which way it needs to go. You can look at the port along the front here. We want to try to slide this bolt out of here. Now while we're in this area, we're going to dislodge our wiring harness from this mounting point so we can continue on with the hardware, holding this upper bracket in place. So for this, I'm just taking hold of my positive wiring harness. I'm using a trim tool down along this base area. You can also use a flat blade screwdriver if necessary. We're just prying it up and out of place. Now, of course, we do need to have room along this area. If there's anything else that you feel as though you need to dislodge, possibly right along here, you can do that as well. You should not necessarily have to do it. This gives us a little bit more room for this mount. To remove the bracket with the wiring out of the way, you're going to find that you have 3 15mm mounting nuts and 1 13mm mounting bolt. We're starting with the bolt. Now at this point, we're going to start removing this bracket. You may find that the transmission has moved on you. If that's the case, just go ahead and alter the height of the transmission again as necessary. So we have the bracket out of the way. We can start removing the mount next. As far as the mount, you're going to find that you have 4 mounting bolts. There's 2 down along the bottom, and then there's 2 up along the top area. Let's start with the ones that are harder to gain access to down along the bottom. For all 4 mounting bolts, we're using a 13mm. You may have to adjust the height of your transmission, up or down, to remove these bolts. There's our first mounting bolt. Let's go ahead and remove the second lower mounting bolt. Then we'll continue on to the upper mounting bolts. Here we are, I have that broken free. Let's see. Get this one out. There's that one. Now it's time for the upper hardware. As for the 2 upper bolts, we're continuing with a 13mm. Now we can remove that transmission mount. There it is, friend. Prior to installation of any brand new part, of course we need to make sure we clean and inspect our mounting area. For this, I'm just using a wire brush. You can use some parts cleaner as well. As we clean, we want to make sure nothing's rotted, weak, or damaged in any way. After cleaning all that, the next thing we'll pay attention to is our hardware. Remove any thread locker or rust from each one of your mounting bolts. Now it's time for installation of our brand new driver's side transmission mount. Let's make sure we have it in the proper orientation. Once you have it in the proper placement, we're continuing on with all 4 of our mounting bolts. We're starting in each one of the mounting bolts before tightening any of them. As far as my mounting bolts, I've cleaned the threads, and I always apply some blue thread locker to these. I've got all the hardware started in. The next thing we're going to do is lightly snug up each one of the bolts. Once I have all 4 of them snugged, we're going to torque them to 41 foot-pounds. Now when I go to tighten this, I want to make sure that I have this completely up against the area that it's resting against. We don't want to have it off kilter in some way. Obviously we can make our adjustments once the bolts are a little closer. There's one. Let's just double check. This is looking good. Let's do the same to all others prior to torquing. There's our first one. Do the same to all others. Here's the bottom ones. Onto the top. Now, prior to installation of the upper bracket, we'll use some anti-seize along each side of our brand new mount. This is the area that the bracket will slide over. Now it's time for our bracket. As we bring the bracket into position, we want to make sure we have it in the proper orientation. Slide it straight on over that mount. You may have to tap on this. You can lightly tap with a hammer if necessary. Now as I look at this, I can tell that I do have to make adjustments. I'm going to carefully raise my transmission, being careful not to cause any damage. We need to make sure all of our studs align, and then we're going to continue on with our mounting bolts in the inboard rearward corner. Now, as I started bringing the transmission up, altering the height, I also find that I need to alter the position of this. Now, if you did need to shift this in some way, we want to be aware of the transmission pan. Right up along the front here, this is made of plastic. We do not want to cause any damage to this, but you may find that you have to carefully press up against the metal portion of this bracket. If you do, I'm going to gently press up against the mounting bolts, not up against the plastic portion of the pan. Just make my way right in here. I'll find some bolts, and then of course I can make an adjustment. Now, as I make my adjustment, forward or rearward, I'm going to carefully start bringing this down. We need to make sure that the mount sits over each one of my studs. Once again, we can use a hammer if necessary. We can lightly tap this into position. Now, as you can tell, I have all of my studs aligned, so I'm continuing on with my mounting bolt. Looking closely where my fingers are here, we can tell that this bolt actually has a coned tip. This is going to fit down inside the upper bracket. It's going to adjust the transmission into the proper placement. So this is where we're starting with the hardware here. Go ahead and start that in by hand, and we're going to bottom it out. Now it's time for all other pieces of hardware holding this in position down to the transmission. We have 3 mounting nuts. At this point, we can torque the hardware. The torque for the mounting bolt on the far rear corner, on the inboard side there, 59 foot-pounds. All 3 mounting nuts, 46 foot-pounds. Now it's time for those mounting nuts, 46 foot-pounds, as I mentioned. Now at this point, we need to alter the height of the transmission again. It's time for the through bolt. The through bolt will come through from the front towards the rear. On the back side, we have our mounting nut. Now at this point, I'm going to fully lower the transmission into the lowered position. Removing the jack from under it, we'll continue on to snugging and then torquing this bolt to 129 foot-pounds. Now it's time for the battery tray. Obviously, we just replaced our mount. This does have a mounting port for one of our mounting bolts. As far as the mounting nut, it would be on the stud located in this area. Our stud is actually broken, but you do of course want to clean it down, give it a close inspection. All the way up in this area, we had our last mounting bolt. That area looks good. After inspecting all that, before we install the battery tray, let's make sure that we reattach this wire. This just slides directly onto the stud here. Now at this point, we can tuck this down forward. We have one more mounting point in this area. This is just going to slide right up along here, pressing it in. Let's continue on with the installation of the battery tray. We're bringing this into position. We're aligning the rear stud with its mounting point. All other areas should align as well. We'll continue on with the hardware. As far as our hardware, we had 2 10mm headed mounting bolts, one in the upper corner up here. Let's go ahead and get that started in. Once I get this thing back in place. Good. Another 10mm mounting bolt in the front area here. Okay, I'll get that one started in. Along the back side here, you should have a 10mm mounting nut. Go ahead and start that in position as well. Now that they're all started on, let's go ahead and snug them up. Let's get this one. After all that's tight, we have to resecure our wiring harness into its mounting area, line it up, press it in. You can use a wire tie if necessary. Let's get our battery in place. Now, once you have it in place, we of course do want to make sure we have it in the proper orientation. We have the negative battery terminal all the way towards the firewall or rear of the vehicle. Once we have it in the proper orientation, of course, you need to make sure you secure it. There should be a mount along the driver's side of the battery. Reinstall that, make sure your battery is secure. Now let's reattach our positive battery terminal to the positive post. We're going to take this, we're sliding it onto the battery as far as possible, and we're going to tighten our 10mm mounting nut. After that, if you have a protective cover, install that as well. Let's move along to reinstalling the negative battery terminal. We're pressing this on as far as possible, 10 millimeter to tighten that mounting nut. Double check, make sure that's secured in place. Now it's time for the lower air filter housing. Looking along the bottom, you remember that I told you there's 2 alignment tabs, and down along the body of the vehicle, you're going to have 2 rubber grommets. Line it up, press it in. It's going to feel along the bottom. Feels as though it's aligned. Press it in. Make sure it's secure. It's okay if it moves around, but it should not easily lift up and out of position. It's time for our forward bracket. The side closest to the air filter housing will have a nut serd on it. We're going to take this, we'll bring it into position. It's going underneath the housing and its small rubber grommet. We're going to carefully start in our mounting bolt here, being aware of any pinch points. Now we're not going to tighten it. Let's make our way to the forward mounting bolt. We'll get this installed as well. Once you have both of those started in, we can go ahead and snug them up. It's time for the air filter. We'll make sure we have it in the proper orientation, so the filtering unit is facing down. Make sure there's no debris along this portion of the air filter, and we'll continue on with the upper housing. Now, as far as this upper housing, you remember there's 3 locating tabs, and on the lower housing there's going to be 3 ports for these to slide into. So we're coming in at an angle, then we'll roll it down, continue on with our 2 locking tabs on the other side. Now as I press this down, we have our 2 locking tabs. Swing them up, listen for a click, double check to make sure each of them are secured as you continue on. Now that I have that locked in position, of course we do still have to secure the air inlet. Let's continue on to the mass airflow sensor next. We're going to take this and we're pressing it into position. Listen for a click here. Now after that click, we're pressing in our red locking tab. Another audible click. It does not move. Secure the wiring harness in the corner here. As you remember during the removal process, I had broken my plastic tab, and I mentioned that I can replace it with a wire tie. So that's just what I'm going to do. I'm going to come straight down through the hole, and of course we'll make sure it's secured. Let's get the air inlet onto the upper housing. We're lining it up, pressing it on as far as possible, and we're using an 8 millimeter to tighten our clamp. Make sure that that's properly secured. You do not want any dirty or unmetered air making its way into the engine. Okay, friend, we finished the installation of our transmission mount. Now the next thing you want to do is start the vehicle. Have your foot on the brake and run it through all gears. We want to make sure there's no odd noises coming from this area. Aside from that, just go ahead and close the hood and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.